What's it like to be taken? What's it like to have something so profound happen to you that it changes every aspect of your life? This is the story of Eric Mitchell, experiencer on Beyond Humanity. Eric Mitchell had a happy life, working a solid job, being a dad, and then out of nowhere, something happened. It started off with an orb and went from there. When you have experiences that Eric has had since then, the change in life's direction, the people you surround yourself with, and how you take everyday challenges takes you on a completely different path than what regular humanity goes through on a daily basis. Eric Mitchell, welcome to Beyond Humanity.
Thanks for having me on, my friend.
Eric, for you, you have been someone who has been awfully quiet for a number of years, yet you've been going more and more public on social media as things have happened to you, trying to learn about your own experiences. But the big question that we all have as experiencers is why me? So before we get into the why me, take us back to that first time you had an experience, because if I am correct, this isn't something that happened since childhood. This is something that came out of nowhere.
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, there are some things in my childhood that were questionable, but we're taught to kind of explain away, paranormal activity any way possible. I didn't believe in the subject at all. I thought people that talked about it were absolutely nuts, and I fell into the social engineered status quo of people that talk about these things are absolutely crazy. Um, I fought it with every step of the way I could. I mean, I looked into delusional disorders. I tried everything I could to back out of this thing that I didn't want to be in. You know, maybe if I was delusional and take medication and see a psychiatrist, all of this would go away and I can fit back in my little box and life would carry on again. And I was telling myself this during a time where I had pictures, videos, eyewitnesses, military helicopters showing up, spotlighting the neighbors, watching this object as it takes off. F-18s chasing these things over, my neighborhood. So the most delusional I've ever been in my life was actually denying that this was going on. Luckily, I had a great investigator that stepped in and he started to compile all this information. And I got to learn a lot from him. Now, in the beginning, I didn't like the things that he was saying, but it turns out what he was telling me were things that were true that I was actually going through.
Eric, take us back to that first experience that you had. How old were you? What happened? What time of day was it?
Gosh, it feels like 100 years ago. It's amazing the changes that you go through, but I was 34 years old and this thing was, I woke up standing outside of my apartment and which was confusing. It was around 4 o'clock in the morning. And here's this orange, reddish fireball sphere. Looked like a miniature sun and it just kind of rippled like water. And it was just not too far off the ground, off the street, not too far from me. I mean, I literally could have taken off my shoe and hit it. It was, um, I was really confused. I had no idea what I was looking at. My idea of a UFO was, a 1950s film with a disc floating, so I didn't know what I was looking at. I did convince myself that it was an optical illusion and I'd be able to figure it out one way or the other, but that wasn't the case. I looked at it for I'd say about 20 minutes until I came inside. I ran some coffee. I turned the news on to see if there was any strange, anything going on. Just shooting for answers. But I left the door open and I would constantly lean over and look at this thing just rippling. And I thought I would be able to see what it was once the sun came out. But when the sun came out, it was gone. So left me with quite a bit of confusion.
I don't know if you recall or not, but you and I actually had a conversation on the phone back in 2015 when I was trying to get you on Spaced Out Radio. And you were actually quite emotional and quite persistent that you weren't ready to come public and talk about this for fear of ridicule, for fear of losing what could be considered important in people's everyday lives. You really struggled with this decision to come public with this. How did you finally grasp the notion that this was something you had to do?
Well, it's really something I don't want to do. You know, it's that struggle where you live 34 years of your life and it completely takes it away from you. You cannot go back in that box. You cannot go back to that old life. I had 110 IQ. I was a simple guy. Through physical effects of this thing, I ended up with 150 IQ and trying to discuss quantum physics with my simple friends, you know, learning that you don't fit in anymore anywhere you go, anywhere you go. Having, you know, simple conversations with people that, love this new designer fanny pack and they're into football and reality TV, and it has no tangibility anymore. None of it does. You look at the ridiculousness of our society and you know you don't fit into it. Everything looks ridiculous after that. So, you know, constantly wanting to go back where it's safe and comfortable, or questioning the fact that you do somehow have this kind of responsibility to move forward. And what does that mean? It means all kinds of hell. It means ridicule. It means losing everything. And I have lost it. And so denying that this is who I am now and this is what I'm a part of, it has some comfort, but it's not an easy life. I've been on the road for 6 years with a backpack and I've been digging up information, you know, boots on the ground, not looking at YouTube channels and trying to decipher disinformation from information. I have the drive of not giving information to the public, but a drive of finding out what happened to me, like no other, because I want to know the truth, you know. And so, yeah, you're kind of stuck in the middle there. Your old life, your new life. What definition is your old, you know, your new one? So it's difficult. It takes a long time. And anyone that has a first experience and jumps out there smiling, I'd question that. It takes years. I mean, look at, well, I'm not going to throw names out there, but you've seen some other people that it's taken 7, 8 years to have some kind of term with it.
What I want to kind of go down the road is because your story sounds very familiar to mine. And I know you've heard my story and I've heard your story before. But for the public out there who may not be experienced enough to understand, when you talk about the emotional aspects of what you gain compared to what you lose, I don't think a lot of people who've had the multitude of experiences like you've had or like I've had, you know, and they don't understand the ramifications of the loss. The idea that people are calling you crazy, the idea that there's all of a sudden family who doesn't want to speak to you. You lose your friends and some friendships for decades over something like this, and it is painful and it is a lonely road. Explain that lonely road for us.
Oh my gosh, we honestly don't have enough time. You and I can write a book about it. I know we could. But yeah, it is a solitary life. Relationships, even jobs can Google you now and say, this guy's nuts. I'm not going to hire him. You know, so yeah, yeah, you are completely separated from the world that you live in. Not just a little bit, but completely separated and ostracized, kicked out of church, lose relationships. Someone that you're going to marry walks away from you. The idea of having children or any normalcy in life is completely gone. So why in the world would someone like you and I stand out there and talk about it? And the thing is that there's so many of us that suffer out there, whether it be just a close encounter or something a lot deeper. But every 100 years, we think we're at the pinnacle of humanity. We don't question it. We are egotistical about it. And this 100 years, we are on the top of the ball. like, we're still children here, and we're still learning the confines of reality. Once we tap into the understanding of quantum physics and actually use it to our benefit instead of allowing it to flow, if you will, we won't even recognize this 100 years, and we will call it barbaric as hell. But for some reason, we always think we're at the pinnacle of understanding. And we have words like paranormal because we just can't define what's going on. And who knows, maybe using 3% of our brain doesn't have the capacity to understand what the future is going to be like and how we can envision it, if you will. If that makes any sense.
You're 34 years old when this happens. I was 38 when it started for me. So, I mean, you and I are roughly around the same age and almost on the same timeline as things start to happen in our lives. So, being a 34-year-old man, trying to get your life in order, you're trying to figure out who you are, establish some sort of common ground that everybody in this on this planet tries to establish, at least in Western uh, the Western side of everything. When you all of a sudden had this experience and you started realizing that you weren't crazy, you weren't having a psychotic type of episode, you were seeing what you were seeing. Did you feel relieved, or did you feel like this was just the opening of a door and a rabbit hole that you had to go down?
Well, I was relieved, even though, people like you and I deal with cognitive dissonance all the time because we have that internal, deep seated want to go back into that box, that matrix. But at the same time, the curiosity, the flavor of life, the thrill of knowing that we're not alone, and what are these people? Where do they come from? So I think it's both. I think, we as experiencers live a duality in life, like a double agent, if you will. We go to the gas station, we go to the grocery store. You never know because we conceal um, so much of ourselves. It's ridiculous, and it's really great. I just went to have a drink the other night, sat down, just one drink, gather my thoughts. The next thing you know, people are recognizing me and they actually appreciate it. They had so many questions and embarrassingly enough, people bought enough drinks where I just went, walked home smiling that night. Those are one of the better parts, of that is when people appreciate your work and what you do and being open about it. But there's also another aspect where we have to hide ourselves. I know husbands and wives that sleep in the same bed as their spouse and could never talk about it, completely concealed off. And that internal working kind of builds up, and it builds up to the point where if they don't erupt and start talking to someone, it's going to be very destructive in their life. Alcoholism, drug abuse, depression, all those things that we all go through. It's a commonality. But yeah, if we don't express our true selves, we're in trouble. Nothing in nature does that. Nothing. I mean, I think the Chinese has a word that I'm fond of. It's jiqiong, that which is of itself. Every aspect of nature is extremely proud of itself and it does a good job. But we as humans have sort of a social sphere, this word crazy, that's really not a diagnosis, it's a self policing word. But we fear that. We're built from a young age to fear judgment from other people that couldn't possibly understand a perspective. So it's a dynamic we have to overcome as a species and move forward and try to understand that this is first and foremost real, and secondly, where is it going to take us?
Before we get into the other multitude of experiences that you have had over the years, I want to ask you, you've now said that you've been on the road for about 6 years trying to find answers, trying to figure out the ultimate question, why me? What have you been able to find? And are you any closer to that why me answer?
Well, yeah, I've actually found a lot. I mean, Lockheed Martin had some things sealed up. There were some scientists that I met that is, they're working on space technologies. I've gotten a hold of Harvard Medical about doing a study on experiencers. I'm aware that Stanford already has, and what they're finding is the impact on people that this blue light has. Gosh, how could I explain all this? This blue pencil beam light, or the light that comes through your window, is made of the same substance as your brain synapse. It's a very particular electromagnetic field that is related to what we would consider consciousness. So it affects your caudate putamen and basal ganglia in the right hemisphere of your brain, so much so that it lights up so bright it looks like white dead matter. It's kind of hidden in plain sight. But on further study, what you're going to find, and what we're going to find in the future with other universities, is that this area of the brain is extremely active and not dead matter at all. And it pertains to psychic ability, spirituality, empathic ability, and now what they call the antenna, where we believe, and this is a placeholder word, spooky action at a distance, or quantum entanglement. So now they're calling this area of the brain the antenna, because it's believed to reach out and receive information, or a two-way conversation that we may not even know that we're aware of having. So it's kind of beyond the understanding of a bad sci-fi film. It's actually pretty exciting that we're coming a ways with that. Now, future space technologies, the way this electromagnetic field works, it's incredible. It's absolutely incredible. So when people look at these objects and say, I felt like this thing was alive, I, they're kind of intuitively telling the truth, because there is communication there, whether you know it or not. There's a connection there that we haven't been able to really put our finger on. Einstein was really upset with spooky action at a distance, but the universe is full of that, and we need to get over that fact and move forward to understanding the quantum level of all these things.
Shortly after you had your experience at 34 years old, you started questioning everything in your life, what was going on. How far between did you have to wait until the second experience happened?
The second experience happened that that night, which is kind of confusing, because 4 a.m. and then 9:30 at night, this object, I was out having a smoke, and I kept looking at that area, and all of a sudden it just kind of slowly turned on, and I'm looking at it, and it's slowly turning back off. I don't know if I'm using the right words for this, but seemingly completely go dark and back on. And it did a horseshoe all the way around me, very slowly, about 2 miles an hour. Um, I could definitely use the word ominous, because it was just above the tree line. It ended up 10 feet above my head on my one-story apartment, and it flashed twice quickly and shot off, gosh, as fast as a bullet. And I remember thinking that there was going to be a sonic boom, or the air displacement itself would probably knock me over, but I felt no effects, or no sonic boom or anything. I was kind of left there stiff. I couldn't move my joints. I was just so scared, awestruck, confused. I think it was at that point I thought maybe it was some kind of military project that was going on. And uh, yeah, I stayed up till maybe 3 o'clock in the morning trying to Google what it is that I had been seeing, which that led to a bunch of conspiracy theorists. And yeah, I just wasn't going to have it.
When did the aliens arrive?
Uh, it, it was them. The next day, I was working on my water pump, and it completely went out. A friend of mine that spent 8 years at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, he lived right across from me. He was helping me work on it. And all of a sudden, I got this vibration on the top of my head. And it got really strong really fast. It knocked me to the ground. I thought I was being killed by something. I mean, it was so abrupt and very strong. If you're in front of a rock and roll speaker and you feel the vibration on your chest, well, you can imagine that times a million, just aimed at your head. And it lasted maybe 10, 15 seconds. And I rocked back and forth as if I was underneath a bank, which felt really funny. And I pulled myself off the ground and I looked up and it was just above my head. And it flashed twice again and took off the opposite way it did the night before. So at that point in time, I literally thought I was assaulted, like this thing was trying to kill me. I had a really rough night. Later on, the side effects of this was I had to get reading glasses to see far away and up close, which is really odd. You know, it's either one of the two. I had burn marks on my shoulders and my face, which I couldn't explain. Um, that rocking back and forth motion that I felt was unexplainable until I met a scientist that has been working on this kind of thing for a long time. And he kind of giggled. And I said, "What are you laughing at me?" You know, and he said, "No." He said, "The pushing back and pulling forward of the electromagnetic field in your eyes," he said, that would cause that condition. There are scientists out there that work with very large and powerful magnets and end up wearing reading glasses because it does the polar opposite in your eyes. He said that rocking back and forth that you went through, well, most of your blood is, the iron in your blood is negatively charged. So if you get around high power electrogravitics, it's going to push you away. But at the same time, that 1% of positive is going to pull to the skin and it's going to make all that skin look red. So, just in a short conversation, what we would call paranormal was scientifically just right there in my face, science can prove a lot of this stuff, but I was confused about it for a long time and really didn't want to talk about it because I knew how crazy it sounded. But at the same time, you know, my intelligence kept going up, my understanding kept going up. Well, what is that? Come to find out, even the Mayo Clinic is using an electromagnetic wand to help repair brain synapses for brain damage, Alzheimer's disease, and things of that nature. So I think just now we're starting to understand electromagnetic and gravitics can literally affect the brain. Even like a fan too close to your head if you sleep at night, if you get an EMP meter, you can see that there's a large amount of that coming out and it can affect the brain, i.e., bad dreams, visions, all kinds of things like that.
Do you remember seeing your first extraterrestrial?
Yeah, I'll never forget it. I'll never forget it. I got that feeling in the very beginning. I would have an overwhelming feeling no matter what I was doing, cooking bacon, going to the bathroom, homework with the kids, Pixar films, those things are great. Love watching those with the kids. But I would literally dart straight toward the door, wouldn't even question myself. And I didn't know what it was. You know, I just knew exactly where I needed to go. And I know when you open the door, you know exactly where to look. And I think you've done this. You know, all of us
Oh yeah.
experiences. Not our, yeah, we're embarrassed to talk about it because we can't explain it, but we get that feeling. You know, and at this particular time, it was overwhelming. And by now, my kids knew if I darted toward that door, they had cameras ready because dad didn't know how to work a cell phone, cameras, anything. You know, I stayed away from technology. And so they would dart behind me and film these things, send it into my investigator so he can take a look at them. And this particular time, it was so overwhelming that I was bursting. I mean, I couldn't believe this feeling. I opened the door and I'm looking up and I'm not seeing anything. And my daughter stands right next to me and she said, "Dad, he wants to meet you." Just a sweet, soft voice. "He wants to meet you." And I looked down across from me, right in my driveway, and this thing is just standing there. Now, a rational person um, would just deny it immediately, and I did. I thought maybe the moonlight was bouncing off a trash can and creating this and that and blah, blah, blah. So the brain starts working the most rational way it can. And so I decided I was going to take a half moon shaped walk and watch this um, illusion change. And, I can laugh at myself. So I started taking that walk and I walked around and I got about 10 feet from this person, whatever it was. And I realized it was real. It was standing there. It was slightly, I would say, bioluminescent, very large eyes, three long fingers, extremely thin. I mean, you can see the rib cage. You can see just really thin femurs and legs. What do? You freeze. You can't even believe that this thing is real and it's just standing in front of you. So I put my hands slowly in my pockets, as if I had encountered a bear in the woods 5 feet away from me, and I'm just looking and I'm scared to death and I'm locked up. And all of a sudden, its shoulder moved extremely fast, just forward and backwards. And that was enough to snap me into flight. So I was running, and my daughter at this time, she was filming and she's standing at the door. And I'm running toward her saying, get inside, get inside. And she's saying, no, he wants to meet you. Don't run away. So I throw her up over my shoulder and ran in and, locked the deadbolt. Like, the deadbolt really helps. But, hey, it was, it was my thinking at the time. But yeah, I mean, I'll never forget that. I'll never forget that because what I wanted to go away was right there. I think that was a crossing point for me, wondering who's flying these craft, what exactly is going on, to stand face to face and not be in dream state, not being laying in my bed, half asleep, or not being, drinking or something like that, just stone cold sober right in front of this thing. You can't deny it after that. I mean, there is a mechanism in your brain that wants you to, but you can't fight that. I mean, it's over the hill right there. So yeah,
Eric,
I
I
mean, these.
wanna I wanna ask you because, I'm having kind of a flashback of my own here, with my own experience in the forest with Samantha Mowat, where I completely froze, and internally, I went into this panic mode, and just listening to what you were saying there, if you could redo that moment, because those moments are so fleeting, would you have ran off, or would you have stayed there and had communication? Because what I know now with my experience with Samantha, if I was to relive that, I would have walked down that path with her to go meet these extraterrestrials. How about you?
Well, that's the thing, we love to tell ourselves that we have a better constitution than what we have, but that fight or flight, it kicks in. So would I put more effort into trying? Yeah, but I don't know what my body's going to do. I mean, that flight just took control, so and we do all as human beings have that fight or flight mechanism in our brain that kind of takes over the computer and protects you. But I'd like to think I'd be well more equipped now. And I think you would be too. Not to say that our knees won't be shaking, not to say that our hearts won't be pounding out of our chests, or be hyper vigilant of the situation, making your new friends maybe a little nervous, especially with their empathic abilities and their abilities to pick up on you. So it's a very complicated thing, I wish it were like the movies where you could just walk up and say, "Hey, I'm Bob. Nice to meet you." But uh, we're we're built to kind of not do that.
Eric, I can't believe what your daughter was going through in filming you with this potential extraterrestrial on your driveway. Whatever happened to that film? And is your daughter okay?
Oh, backwards first. I was really creeped out about how calm she was about it. Here I am freaking out, and she's, I think children, even my son, they immediately accepted it for what it was, and they really didn't go through a whole lot of trauma with that. Me being 34 years old, indoctrinated into all kinds of different, societal thinking, it was extremely difficult for me to wrap my head around it. So in a way, thankfully, they weren't as badly affected as I was. Um, the the footage, a lot of things got hacked, a lot of things got lost. Um, a lot of things are going to be concealed as well. When you're in a closed case, say like a murder case or something like that, the police aren't going to let out a whole lot of information into the public. It could be skewed, it could be toyed with. Um, for instance, I've put a couple of videos of mine on social media, and of course, the next day you see it on someone else's social media, and they're saying it's their footage. So that really takes a lot of validity out of things and stuff like that. So it is a closed case, but we are filming right now as we speak. I mean, I'm flying out on the 18th to do a documentary on all the evidence that we have from the case and try to explain, what happened during these events and things of that nature. I'm sure a lot of people would like to see, great footage and all that stuff. But look at 2013, I had a 2010 cell phone, flip phone. So some of the footage isn't all that great, but look at the Pentagon. They're saying low visibility and things of that nature. One of the intelligence people I spoke to, he pulled out an 8 by 10 manila envelope and showed me a picture of one of these objects. And he said, "Have you ever seen one of these?" And I giggled and I opened up my cell phone and I showed him. He said, "You mean to tell me that my $15 million plane with a $4 million camera can't get a better picture than you?" And I said, "Well, there's a difference between you chasing them and them chasing me." So, um, if it hovers in the yard, I'm going to take a picture of it, and there you go. So, out of respect to science, out of respect to truth, it's been a closed investigation. And most importantly, the emotional aspects I've had to go through with this. You get attacked, people make rumors about you. I wasn't aware of, how this all happens. But now that I am, I could probably be a little bit stronger by coming forward through this process. It's not easy. You get attacked by people you've never met. People make things up about you. They go after your character, disproving their own, by the way. And it's not as easy as just stepping forward and saying, "Hey, this happened." You have to prepare your life for it. You have to warn what little friends you have left that, hey, we may not be friends after this. So it's very sacrificial. It definitely doesn't pay you money, and gosh, I barely work a job to get by. I don't even chase money. You don't take it with you when you die. But yeah, it's about to open up, and it's not going to be fun on my part. But I feel it's just a responsibility to release the information.
When you say case is closed, what do you mean by that? What kind of case?
Um, well, my investigator, he's been with MUFON for a very long time. At the time, he was not in MUFON when I contacted him. I was just trying to find somebody that knew what was going on with me. Um, and since he already had that set of mind to collect information, gather witness statements, and build that kind of case, something that would be submissible in court, to prove what was going on with me. I never asked him to do that. I just wanted emotional support. I wanted to know what was going on. But his mindset, since he was with MUFON for such a long time, is to put all these pieces together and take a look at the whole. And it's conclusive. I mean, it is what it is. But um, to make the decision, Jack and Jim Weiner, the Allagash twins, they were like, take your evidence, throw it under your bed, go live your life. Do not, because these guys went through hell. I know they're the real thing. I spent time at their home. We talked about what happened to them, and um, it's just one of the many, people out there that have dealt with this, since 1972, and they regret what I'm about to do. And I've been warned by plenty of people. Travis Walton, he has a hard time. He and I lived together for a while under, certain circumstances. So he lives with it. It's tough on his life. You can tell over time it's been easier for him, but behind closed doors, man, it's a lot of suffering. It really is. So opening this case, making that decision, is clearly out of the fact that I've worked with thousands of experiencers that would never come out of the closet. And it puts you in a place of knowing you have a responsibility to vindicate the type of lives, advocate what they've gone through, and, show people that might be open-minded enough to look at these things and go, yeah, these people suffer. They're not some crack jobs. They're not some, drug addict or schizophrenic. These people are real, and we're hidden in society all over the place.
Eric, you talk about being accused of being fraudulent. You talk about how the UFO community has stolen your footage. and some people have tried to claim it as their own. You talk about how people are very rude in the fact that they've never met you, they've never talked to you, but immediately they've already prejudged your character. I think that's one of the hugest mistakes that ufology makes in that. Why do you think that is happening with many experiencers in the community, and how have you combated that?
Understanding, um, understanding. Once you realize that counterintelligence has had their hands on ufology from its inception, and you can maybe imagine that this social sphere is created without the knowledge of its user. And so you can see those things, as soon as a new experiencer comes out and go, look, hey, this happened to me and it sucks. They're already trained to dive bomb you. It's almost like a PTSD mechanism because they've been in the game for so long. And so it's a reaction out of them that has been entrained for a long period of time. Immediately attack, ask questions later, and they don't even know they're part of the problem. They just think that they're being part of the solution by getting rid of all these frauds. It should be very clear who these frauds are out there. If you're selling backpacks to kids on YouTube, you you might you might want to look at that sideways. But if someone is burning 1,500 calories in their sleep due to PTSD and never talking about it to anyone, these are the real people, and these people suffer. I suffer. I know you suffer. And we don't do what we do like what we're doing now. Instead of hanging out in the park with our dog throwing a frisbee, we could be indoor skydiving right now, but for some reason we're here, and we're talking about this. And to be attacked, look, it's just going to happen. There's, people are irresponsible with their thoughts in everyday life all the time, and we should be held accountable for that. um, Ignore them, ignore them, let them. That's them. That's not us. That's not our character. That's not who they are, who we are. So let them display their character in public if they wish, and keep going forward. Do you? Because it's just going to be out there. Snakes bite, dogs bark, but you've got to be responsible for what you do. And arguing and fighting and all that stuff, I have other things to do with my time.
Eric, you mentioned about universities and the studies that you have done in order to try and figure out what's going on with you. You have been somebody who has been studied about this topic. Explain a little bit what has happened through these universities, and can you name them?
I've been studied by a few folks at MIT. Unfortunately, financing isn't enough and all these things. But yeah, I've been poked and prodded a little bit here and there. Looking forward to the future where we can open up bigger projects in major universities. Um, I know there was a Stanford study done. I don't know if maybe I should mention the names of a lot of people, but let's just say somebody with 6 PhDs wanted to scan do CAT scans or MRIs on 100 experiencers. That study was done at Stanford. There was major information found with the caudate putamen and basal ganglia, its activity, the quote unquote antenna activity that happens in the experiencer's brain alone and not the average person. I've been speaking to Harvard University about opening up the study there, grant writing process. Um, since COVID hit, it's been not funded, but we could still get on the phone and have conversations and bring everyone up to speed about things they may not want to hear. You're talking to scientists, and scientists need proof. They have to go on that, and surprisingly enough, they are ahead of the game right now. So hopefully that program can go forward, get grant funding, and we can get on the ball with piggybacking off of what Stanford has done, and look closer at the DNA, look closer and with better equipment. Look out, University of Texas, because I'm salivating thinking about going after them, and several other universities. But once you have enough information that's compelling to these people and know that they're in competition with other major universities, you can kind of play that against each other on who's going to find the most information now that there is information there. So my hat's off to Stanford. I was not involved in the study. I sent out a lot of emails and stuff like that, but it is what it is. Yeah, I mean, this needs to happen. This nuts and bolts science is real. It's there. Einstein called it spooky action at a distance. I know scientists have a lot of trouble touching on the subject, but now that there's tangibility, let's see how far we can push the bill here. Let's see if we can get this in books, science, because it is science.
It's great to see that Stanford is involved with this, and of course, I'm pretty sure Gary Nolan or Dr.
Yeah,
Gary Nolan would have a good
you said his
reason
name, not
to
me.
do that.
Yeah, you said his name, not me, so it's your fault. I don't know, if Gary's backing away from this or not, but my hat's off to the man because he did a phenomenal job.
For people who do not know Dr. Gary Nolan, he works very closely with Dr. Jacques Vallée and was one of the original scientists on the To the Stars Academy before pulling back and concentrating on his own work. Now, when you mention the brain that the part of the brain that we are not using, why has this been thought of to be some sort of conductor or antenna to some portion of consciousness or extraterrestrial contact?
Well, I don't know how far Gary's gone with this. For me personally, I was knocked down by this object. It did change me profoundly. So naturally, since I know what happened to me, I have to back engineer and find out scientifically, well, what actually happened. So I had to chase down a lot of answers there. But it does seem like there is not seem. We can't prove it, but we can see it, that these microtubules in that part of the brain is non-local. It's sending and receiving, i.e., I think that's why Dr. Nolan calls it the antenna, because sending and receiving is obviously going on. But how are we going to understand this? It's a quantum level. It's something that we barely have gotten into, quantum physics as a species. And once we do understand it, today's time is going to be barbaric and non-recognizable, to the youth. And a lot has changed. Look at the past 100 years, has changed for us. So we can't imagine what the future is going to hold with this understanding. We pray to God. This understanding has been around for a very long time, throughout history, that if we close our eyes and reach to the stars, something is actually happening. And now we know it actually is. So uh, here's to the future of finding out what this is and how we're communicating with the world or universe around us.
Eric, can you get into specific experiments that you have taken part of in order to learn more about this phenomena that is happening to you?
Sure, yeah, some. I, I don't want to get too deep into it because, there's so much understanding to be had. But after I was knocked down by that object, I know that I experienced the ability to kind of focus on the center of my brain, and it would vibrate and do different things. My gosh, I thought I had a brain tumor or something like that, but it turns out I went to a Nashville recording studio, had a microphone just strapped to my head right here, and we were able to do it at will, which is, I guess, pretty rare. I know the Stanford study was talking about maybe 30 hertz coming from the brain of the experiencer. There's no mechanism in the brain that can actually create this. Some people that meditate would be 50 to 100 hertz, which is really impressive. Now that's below average hearing range, but the sound does exist. For myself, for some reason, I'm able to tap into this at will. We actually went to a Nashville recording studio and did 1,590 hertz at sheer will with better control than my actual voice fluctuation. So that's both scared and impressed the heck out of those sound engineers because they were running diagnostics on their machines and trying to figure out what the heck just happened. So we repeated it quite a few times. It was successful. But here you have another sign of something inside the brain that is coming out, it's reaching out. So we're just at the very beginning of understanding all these things, and that's what we need is more academics knowing that this is going on and jump forward into trying to understand it.
No, very true. Very true. After you had this experience, how long was it before the military showed up and you started having strange experiences like you were being watched by the government?
Well, that does sound a bit like paranoia or a movie. But what they do is they pull a domestic intelligence report, and that allows them to take a look at you. I had no idea this guy was kind of creeping around. I think in every neighborhood we have this cat lady, you know, and mine, her particular name was Debbie. She was a porter at Lakeshore Condos down the street. And she would go in and change the sheets and soaps and everything. And she had walked into this man's room, and there were pictures, developed pictures. I think she said there was a Walmart bag where he had these pictures developed, and they were all over the bed. And there was a ledger on the nightstand. It talked about when I went to work, what time I got off work, the kids' schedules, their sporting events. I mean, this guy had me down, pat. There was pictures of us at Walmart playing ball in the park. Uh, my first thought, to be honest with you, is I've got two teenage daughters, and here's a grown man, following them around. My first thought wasn't the UFO problem. My first thought was we got us a creep. So, I told Debbie over the phone, she called me and she said, "This guy is stalking you and the kids." And I said, "Get off the phone, go to the office, get that man's name. We've got to have his name." So she called me back later and she said, "It's Lieutenant Colonel Dallas C. Wood." And so I immediately called my investigator. I said, "Look, I've got a problem. I need to find out who this guy is." So what he did was he picked out five guys, you know, and sent it to Debbie. And Debbie picked the one that actually worked for the Pentagon. He was in the Department of Foreign Relations, Foreign Technologies, involved in a lot of other things. So once I found out his background and what he did, I definitely didn't think it was a creep, following around teenage girls, but pertaining to a military issue. So he was kind of caught red-handed there, and that's how they do. That's how they are. I mean, they don't approach you right off the bat because of plausible deniability. And once they watch you enough, they can kind of determine whether you're going to run your mouth and do these things. And most people in intelligence, they contact you, so you spread disinformation to other people. So, I just kind of stay away from that. I know someone similar to us that has had a lot of trouble with people in three-letter agencies that kind of guide them with information, keep them from saying certain things. So I just stay away from the whole mess. It's disinformation and control.
Eric, how did they find out about you?
Oh my gosh. Excuse me, a little sinus. But the first time I knew the military was involved is myself, Dan, who was at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base for 8 years, good friend of mine, Eddie Murphy type personality, great guy. Two of my kids, we were all standing outside talking, and this object came down just above the tree line, and it was just right there. And really all we could do was kind of belly up to my Cadillac, to have that kind of illusion of protection in front of you, big chunk of metal, and stand there in awe. It's not moving, so we're not moving. But you're not exactly going to look away this way or that way. You are locked. You are watching this thing. And the next thing you know, you hear blah, 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 blah behind us. This chopper comes up over the trees, over the power lines, and dips down. The object takes off immediately. I mean, it's out of sight within a second. So we turn around. This helicopter's in our face. I'm holding my hat on my head. That's how close he is. He's on the street now, not landed, but hovering over the street. And I remember seeing these big glasses, look like sunglasses on his face. He spotlighted us individually, and then he went up and down the street with the spotlight, turned around and looked into the grass area, and then rose up, turned around, and went back over the trees and disappeared. There were no markings on this helicopter. Later on, to find out it was a Black Hawk helicopter, which these things don't leave the ground without live munitions. That's a scary thought. And later on, I was talking to a pilot. Um, it said, Eric, you know nothing of this stuff. He said he wasn't wearing sunglasses at night. He said, that's a gun camera. He said, one, he was either taking pictures of you, or two, he was aiming at you to shoot a 50 millimeter. He said, thankfully, he was probably only taking pictures. But that was the night I realized the DOD was involved. They had a confirmation, through whoever this pilot was, and I hope he comes forward. Eventually, I mean, we're in disclosure now. This guy has to be out there somewhere and eventually come forward and say, yeah, I took those pictures. But he definitely saw, and I think maybe they picked it up on radar, and decided to follow up and see what was going on out there. Out of
Yeah, and that
speculation.
leads us right down another rabbit hole, though, because now you have the rabbit hole of why this is happening. The experiencers now starting to happen where other people are getting involved, and now you got the rabbit hole of the government finding you. So did you think that before that incident they knew who you were and were just following an object on radar, or did you think that maybe somehow through phone conversations or what have you, that that's how they were able to connect the dots that you are an experiencer?
Well, the pictures and videos were being hacked off of my phone, my daughter's computer, and a couple of my neighbors before that instance. So I can maybe speculate that they knew beforehand. But I can definitely say with a helicopter that close to the object and us, um, I can say for sure that is one night of confirmation for them. That there was something going on. And these objects were smart too. They would literally hide at the base of the mountain behind my house, as if they knew radar could be tracking them or something like that. But yeah, I literally told my daughter, I said, go make a pot of coffee. The military will be here tonight and we can get some answers. But they never showed up. Instead, a few days later, a couple of, well, they said they were recruiters. They pulled up in an army Jeep, parked at the end of the street, not in my driveway, came to my front door, knocked on the door, and I had two underage daughters in the house. And they went in and shut the door and said that they were recruiters. One of which said he had to use the restroom and walk down the hallway, and the other one opened up a laptop and talked about joining the military. Now, Dan across the street was upset because he said these men were in Navy uniforms but driving an Army vehicle, and they had no identification or badges or anything like that on their clothes. So he called me to work and said, Eric, you need to come home. Something's wrong here. Well, my daughter got suspicious, went down the hallway, and there was nobody in the bathroom. This man was in my bedroom going through my deck. And she said, what are you doing in my dad's room? And he said, well, I saw a kitty cat here and I wanted to pet it. Mind you, these are two underage daughters, children. That's a PR problem for any military officer. You don't even get in an elevator with an underage kid. You wait because you represent, the military. You're taught that in PR. Well, come to find out, this man had put a GPS tracking device in my desk. And later on, we found another one underneath my car in my vehicle. So they're just basic late 1940s, early 1950s GPS tracking devices that the CIA used a long time ago. So we had to get those analyzed and looked at and all that. So uh, neither one of those gentlemen worked for the recruiting center here in town or at the state capitol. So I have no idea who those guys were.
What happened to those GPSs?
My investigator has them, just part of the pile of evidence that we've put together over the years.
Are you still tracked?
I have no idea. As a matter of fact, over time, you kind of give up on whether you are or not. I've got a life to live. I can't sit around in paranoia or wonder if my phone conversations are being listened to. I can't bother myself with it. Even body markings. Wake up in the morning, I don't want to look at anything on my body. I hope I don't find a scoop or another laser mark or something like that. I don't even expect myself. These are just distractions from things that I could be doing that could probably cause positivity in the world, like helping someone. You don't want to get caught in that trap of feeling sorry for yourself, or like you said earlier, why me? We all question, why is this happening to me? But the more distractions we can remove from our lives and kind of go after that goal. And I think we could see that in ufology too. There's so many distractions in ufology. We're not talking about the subject at all. We're talking about Bob did this and we can discredit him now. And, it's just a big sandbox where everybody's pulling each other's hair. And, that's met a lot of people, great people in ufology, but it seems like the social sphere has kind of had dad in the background running everything, nonchalant, like creating a social sphere um, you know, friction instead of, actually going somewhere with this subject.
Eric, do you
Yeah.
think that the majority of ufology really understands the experiencer?
No, no, not at all. Not at all. I mean, the experiencer is the answer to ufology. But the problem is ufology is caught up in other things. They're just other things. You may have an experiencer popularized for a little while, and that's good for book sales and views and all these things. But you can't get inside of an experiencer to get the answers you want. We hide that stuff. You know that. I know that. It takes a lot of scratching and a lot of know-how to get to the inside of a quintessential experiencer. It takes years of practice and understanding, and most importantly, you have to be one. It takes one to know one. So even if a trained ufologist tries to crack an experiencer open and get the real stuff, it's just not going to happen. We guard it too well. We guard it from our own, wives and husbands, for Christ's sake. We're not going to crack open for a stranger. So yeah, the true quintessential experiencer really has so many answers to them. And we can't wait anymore. It's time, and that's one thing. All of us experiencers, we wait to hear those two words. It's time, and that, and I know that it is time. It is now that people like us need to come forward. There is an agenda that could be used with this subject, and just like the coronavirus could be used for maybe political power or people get away with things. You can imagine how powerful disclosure could be. Or my gosh, we're being invaded and everyone needs to stay in their homes. It's a very powerful, possibly dangerous thing. But if you and I do the work that we are supposed to do, I think we can kind of change the future of understanding of what's going on. You and I have certainly been in a lot of fear and gone through a lot of internal workings, but I don't think either one of us think that we're in danger of all being taken over or killed or anything like that.
No, but the way I look at it, when I look at disclosure and the movement that has happened over the last couple of years and the great movement that we've seen on the mainstream, whether it's through TTSA or the way the media is covering things, we seem to be really pushing towards the military side. We seem to be pushing towards the governmental side. And it is about those two messages by all means necessary and any means necessary. And I've often said recently over the last year that the experiencer is the forgotten one in disclosure here. Yet you're saying, much like I believe, the experiencer has the knowledge and the capability to really bust open ufology and bust open the disclosure movement. Why do you feel so strong about that? Do you think we've been given messages by those from above?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I believe that. I mean, if you look at people that claim they have spirit guides or people that meditate and all of a sudden have information. I mean, I've got Nikolai Tesla on my shirt right now. He believes his information came from space. Um, and, he would also hold these keys or bells in his hand and sit up and fall asleep. And when he would drop one of those bells, it would wake him up and put him in the state of mind that is in the caudate putamen and basal ganglia. So, even Einstein had his thought experiments. You'll see a lot of famous musicians say it just came to me. I don't know why John Lennon thought of this song just off the top of his head. If you dig for the evidence, this spooky action at a distance or antenna or communicating is happening, and it's happened for a millennia to human beings, whether it's through meditation or any other means. But it's always happening. Look at the quintessential experiencer. You've been an experiencer's meet. You don't see a bunch of people fighting over controversy things. You don't see one person fighting, and it's supportive. It's helpful. These are highly evolved human beings. They accept everything. I say they. I say we. But we seem to have an understanding, a more evolved way of looking at things. And could you imagine the whole world being that way? It would be extremely peaceful and giving and loving. But unfortunately, we don't have that right now. So even that being a message, is just incredible. But yeah, I think that goes really deep. I think it goes deeper than people are willing to accept or understand right now. But it's coming. You can't. We're already on that escalator. I am really upset that the only Pentagon releases are going to be over the ocean, as if they haven't ever been over land. These depictions are misleading now because there's a lot going on over our soil. I think Lou Elizondo, he's talked about these things being over soil, but there's no, videos being released. So I think it's slightly misleading the way they're doing things, and I worry that it could be used against everyone. It's a powerful thing not to. The general human being would not think in these nefarious types of ways. We don't think, gosh, someone's going to lie to me today, because you don't have it in your heart and soul to run around and want to lie to someone else. So you don't think in those terms because you think from your own terms. But yeah, there are some very nefarious things out there, and leverage like disclosure. There's some people that wouldn't want to pass it up.
No, I fully understand with what you're saying in regards to that. But the message that you were trying to convey in regards to this subject, did you receive that from your extraterrestrial visitors, or is this something that you put together on your own?
Well, the only real understandable communication, let's put it that way, was to look is not to see. It is merely to observe with what little we have to offer. And I think at the time, that message, I guess maybe was trying to help me with my confusion, and standing in front of these objects, seeing this blue light shimmer in front of me, knowing now that this is a communication or a manipulation or something of the sort. Let's leave that wide open because it has to be. These emotions that pass back and forth, the psychic and empathic connection. And people say, well, this guy believes in psychic, he's nuts. Guess what, guys? It happens to everybody, sporadically, of course, but it happens. This kind of connection, there's no denying it, and say if you were to hug your own mother, that has an emotional signal to it. There's no other feeling in the world like that. You can't go anywhere else and get that. It's a very particular thing. So that in itself, in silence, it is a form of communication. It's love. You understand it very well. I think it's way more advanced than what we can understand right now. But yeah, that kind of communication. But I don't think it's ever been evil or angry, except one occasion. I do want to talk, just kind of throw this in here. There was many occasions where these objects would show up. Eventually, everybody in my neighborhood moved away. It was a short dead end street, 23 units. They all moved. Me and my kids were, one of the last to move away because of the activity. But I do remember coming to the door, knowing something was out there, opened up the door. It was just above the apartment in front of me, one-story apartment. And the first thing, it actually came out of my mouth. I said, whoa, are you mad at me? Because it just felt, so heavy. And all of a sudden it took off, and another object that looks just like it chased it out of my yard. And they both bowed up way up in the sky and disappeared. The one that chased it up in the sky came back down and hovered as if it went, wanted to check on, if I was harmed or something like that. Now, that's something that I really want to know what happened there. What is going on? I feel like that's some sort of a key. Why would these two not get along? Why would this one come back and check to see if I was okay or just come back at all? So it leaves open a lot. I do hear a lot of people that claim to have more answers than I do, but I just have more questions than answers all the time.
Do you think you'll ever get those answers going down the road until the end of your time?
Uh, I sure hope so, but being on the road as long as I have, and chased down information as much as I have, lost weight, almost died, getting sick, not taking care of myself, constantly going after a goal day after day, um, not providing for myself. I realized that most of the answers are what's on the inside of us, and stop chasing and be, you are that. That's what we are now. We are a part of this whole. And yeah, I always want to chase for more answers, but most experiencers want to reach out to a particular person to just feel okay for a while. But eventually, when they get strong enough, the person that they're looking for is them. And once they realize that, they can grow some more, and they can get stronger and learn to at least do a radio interview or speak, let some of this off their chest and heal, to get at the pinnacle of who we are and be strong in this. As well as I do, there's a lot of people who are going to need people like you and I later on down the road, just for basic understanding. And, you and I, we don't think we're special at all, but someone off the street would, taking a psychology class, would thoroughly be intrigued after knowing, what is going on out there. That's a ton of information that's just normal to us, but not the average person.
Getting back to the government, as we have a couple more questions here before we wrap things up. Have you ever been contacted by any government officials to work with them or to help explain your information that you have found with these objects?
Oh man, that's a loaded question. Yes, I have met with other experiencers, handpicked, with one intelligence officer who's on medical leave. I don't know if he's alive to this day. I dare not mention his name, but he talked about, ATIP and disclosure coming up and the responsibility of the experiencer stepping in. I was also contacted by a CIA contractor because there was some technology being built and put together. The CIA was there to look at this stuff, and they mentioned, wow, that makes sense out of Eric Mitchell's case. Well, this contractor didn't know who I was. He said, I've never heard of Eric Mitchell. So he got a hold of me through Facebook. And he said, yeah, the guys in the CIA were talking about you, and I just had to know who you were. He said, I thought I'd looked at every case out there, so, and there's a lot of us, quiet, but there, I have been contacted by disinformation intelligence officers that would, love to have conversations and feed me disinformation, but usually I pick up on that pretty quick. I'm not very nice to them about that because I don't want them thinking they can come back and talk to me some more. I'm not playing that game. That game is being played on ufology, and it's extremely dangerous, and it's caused a lot of problems in a lot of lives. So I do stay away from three-letter agencies. There are some good people out there. They're not all bad, but yeah, if they're out for disinformation or to muddy the waters, I won't deal with them.
How do we tell?
Oh God, for me, practice. um, but yeah, how do you tell? The first guy I met with, I don't appreciate this guy pulling up with a gun on his hip. You know, in the middle of nowhere. That's scary. And he seemed to be very forthright, forthcoming. But at the same time, if you're a liar for 30 years for the military, I mean, that's what, these guys do. They lie for a living, um, to keep intelligence secret and safe, and it's a game they've been playing forever. The only way I could tell with this first particular person was that he he was right about everything. Everything he told me, everything he warned me about has come into fruition. ATIP did come forward. They used the New York Times. He told me all these things were going to happen long before To the Stars Academy ever got put together. So he knew he was telling me the truth. This CIA contractor, he was a scientist. He was the one who explained to me what happened to my body when I got too close to this object. So, I know he was telling me the truth about these things and the names he knew. Uh, Before the aviary ever broke, I was studying these bird names. I was looking at the phenomenology desk, the fifth floor of the Pentagon, who was involved, who used to run it, Kit Green. I was looking at all these things, and I found all these things because Lieutenant Colonel Dallas C. Wood. I grabbed his record and I started tracing all these things and found out about all these people. So when he mentioned those names, I kind of knew right off the bat that, yeah, these are the people involved. But as far as intelligence, no, I don't trust them. There are good guys out there, but who has the time to try to decipher all of this? They are placeholders. They are put there to keep us confused about information. So I don't deal with it. There's ufologists out there that talk to these people all the time. Good luck. But that's not the direction I'm going. What I want to do is advocate for all experiencers out there that go through the internal struggle that you and I go through every single day. That's important. Empower each other. You know, we are the pieces of the puzzle. We are the information, and the more we get together and the more we meet, the more we're going to understand what happened to us and see beyond our own, tiny perspective into a picture of the whole as a people.
Eric, as we start to wrap this up, do you ever regret this happening to you? Do you regret the experiences? Do you regret the things you've had to learn that at first you would have completely denied, but now you realize are a major part of human reality?
I miss my old life. I miss having a simple mind where the most complicated part of my day was making the right tie on a hook when I'm going fishing. Simple, you know. I miss it, I do, but it's gone. And, I have to accept the fact that all of that is gone. And I have this burden and responsibility to deal with. And it's incredibly tough. It builds character, it breaks you down, it'll beat you up beyond belief, but you have to find the strength to keep going. In a way, I do regret it. And I wish I could just make it all go away. But at the same time, it is an extraordinarily interesting life. And so I think that I'm coming out of it and I'm getting to the point where I'm letting the past go and future is right in our faces with this. And we need to act and put our emotions aside, put our fears aside, and take on the responsibility of being a part of it. And it's gonna suck, promise. But we got to keep going. I mean, we are the change that the future hopes to have.
Eric, you are one of the most respected experiencers in the UFO community. The people who've really got to know you know you're not doing this for money. You're not doing this for fame. You're not doing this out of ego. You're doing it to get the message out because you are real, you are human, and you are someone who cares about other people who may not understand what is going on. I think you need to be commended for that with every opportunity that you were given. I want to say a big thank you, Eric, for coming on Beyond Humanity here at UAPresearch.com. Before we let you go, do you have any following messages to experiencers or non experiencers who want to believe?
Well, for people that want to believe, you're on the right track and you're a hell of a lot smarter than I ever was. Because I couldn't believe I couldn't. For experiencers, guys, it's time. We're not no longer waiting for 10 years in the future, or maybe 50 years in the future, or maybe one day when we're dead and gone, that maybe what little we did here can make a difference. Now is the time. The military has taken their stance. It's not necessarily going to be the most healthy one for the world. And it's time to at least meet each other, be active together. And really, if you can get out there and start speaking, get a hold of me. I'll advocate you. I'll help you. I'll get you on radio shows. The more voices, the better, because it's our responsibility to do this, not our government. Our government doesn't come running to help you when this happens to you. So don't expect them to do a good job with disclosure. It's not going to happen. It's us, the people, we, the people. We have a constitution that says that, and that's the way it should be. We need to come forward. And if we can do it in numbers, we can feel strong about it. And the future of this planet, humanity, is going to benefit from what we do as experiencers right now.
Eric, once again, thank you so much for coming on Beyond Humanity at UAPresearch.com. You can check out UAP Research on YouTube, as well as follow us at UAP Research on Twitter. And for myself, Dave Scott, check us out at Spaced Out Radio and on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show. Thank you so much for coming on Beyond Humanity, and we will have another great experiencer with another great episode next time.